At 1:52 a.m., our server exported a security recording from tomorrow. The timestamp said 2 hours 17 minutes and 9 seconds. I knew it had to be a mistake. Then I saw myself in the footage. I was standing in the cold aisle of server room B, staring at something outside the camera's view. I watched myself look up. Then I ran. The file ended. I was still sitting at my desk. For several seconds, I didn't move. The server room continued humming around me. CRAC units, cooling fans, UPS indicators blinking blue between the racks. Everything was normal, except the video. I checked the file properties. /export/next_day/02-17 cambit.mp4. Created at 1:52. The scheduler was disabled. I knew because I'd disabled it myself 3 weeks earlier after a series of false fire alarms. I checked the system clock again.
1:52 a.m.
25 minutes before the footage. Played it again. There I was. Same black hoodie. Same security badge. Same slouched shoulders. I walked into frame and stopped. Then I looked toward the far end of the aisle. There was nothing there. At least nothing I could see. But something changed in the reflection of a rack door. Tiny distortion. Like a ripple moving across water. Except there was no water. I paused the video. The ripple stopped too. I leaned closer. For half a second, I thought I saw something standing behind my future self. Then the frame jumped. Nothing. I closed the file. I needed proof. Something physical. Something the footage couldn't possibly know about. I grabbed a roll of orange maintenance tape from the operations drawer. I tore off a strip. Wrote 1:55 across it. Then I walked into camera B's coverage area and stuck it to the floor beside the third rack. I stood there for several seconds. Nothing happened. I went back to the control room, refreshed the export folder. A new file appeared. 02:18, cambit.mp4. My throat tightened. I opened it. Same aisle. Same camera. But I wasn't in the frame. The orange tape was. Except the number had changed. It now read 217. Underneath it, in my handwriting, the number had been crossed out. Below that, 218. I stared at the screen. I hadn't written that. I scrubbed forward. The camera shook slightly. Not like a mechanical vibration. More like someone had touched it. Then the rack door at the end of the aisle opened by itself. 1 inch. Stopped. Closed. I looked at the live feed. The door was still closed. The orange tape was exactly where I'd placed it. I looked back at the recording. The final frame was different. The tape was gone. I checked the live feed again. Still there. I stood slowly. My chair rolled backward on its own. Just a few inches.
No breeze. No slope.
The casters whispered across the floor. Then stopped. I didn't sit down again. I needed another test. I took my multi-tool and placed it in the center of camera B's view. Then I returned to the desk. Refreshed the folder. Another file appeared. 02:19, cambit.mp4. I opened it. The multi-tool was there. But it had moved. 1 tile closer to the server rack. I looked at the live feed. The tool was still exactly where I'd left it. I stared at the 2 screens. One showed where the tool was. The other showed where it would be. Except the future version was wrong. It was showing a movement that hadn't happened. Yet, I reached for camera B's cable. Pulled it. The live feed went black. I switched off the camera's power. The tiny indicator disappeared. The room became strangely quiet. Then the export folder refreshed. A new file appeared. 02:19, cambit.mp4. I stared at it. The camera was disconnected. There shouldn't have been a recording. I opened the file. It showed me pulling the cable. Exactly what I had just done. But the footage didn't stop. The camera kept looking down the aisle. The image continued beyond the moment the camera had supposedly died. A gray banner appeared across the screen. Offline. But the font was wrong. It wasn't our system font. It looked almost handwritten. Then the camera moved. Not the image. The camera itself. Slowly. Turning toward the end of the aisle. I closed the file. My phone was already in my hand. I called Tarek, the other night technician. He answered after 4 rings. What? Don't come in. Silence. I'm at home, he said. I know. Then why are you telling me not to come in? I looked at the export folder. A new file appeared. 02:20, South Door MP4. My stomach tightened. I opened it. Tarek was in the video, walking across the loading ramp. He stopped at the south entrance. His hand moved toward the keypad. Then he froze, as if he'd heard someone call his name. The video ended. I looked at my phone. Tarek was still on the line. Listen to me, I said. Do not come here. I told you I'm home. Promise me. He sighed. Fine. I promise. I stayed on the phone. The south corridor suddenly felt colder. I walked toward the door. The lot outside was empty beneath the sodium lights. I threw the interior bolt. Then I pressed my ear against the glass. Nothing. I breathed into my sleeve just to feel the warmth. Then another file appeared. 02:21, South Door MP4. I opened it. The footage showed me standing exactly where I was standing now. My hand was on the bolt. I looked toward the glass. Nothing outside. Then the entire window turned white. A handprint appeared on the other side. The fingers were too long. The palm pressed against the glass. I heard the impact in the real hallway. Half a second after it happened in the video, I froze. The corridor was empty, but the glass still looked slightly distorted, as if something was pressing against it from the other side. I backed away. I returned to the control room. I turned every monitor off. One by one, black screens filled the room. Then I saw my reflection. Something was wrong with it. I was standing in the center of the room. My reflection was standing slightly behind me. I turned. Nothing. I looked back. The reflection had moved closer. I stepped away from the monitors. They suddenly turned on. All of them. Not the camera feeds. Folder. A directory I'd never seen before.
Personnel.
I didn't touch the keyboard. The folder opened anyway. Inside were badge numbers. Dozens of them. Some were active. Some belonged to employees who had left years ago. Mine was at the top. I clicked it. One file. 02:17, Office MP4. My hand hovered over the mouse. I almost closed the folder. Instead, I opened it. The camera showed my desk. I was sitting there, exactly where I was sitting now. For several seconds, nothing happened. Then the future version of me slowly looked up. He wasn't looking at the camera. He was listening to something behind it. My future self stood, turned slightly, and stopped. A pale hand entered the bottom of the frame. It moved toward his mouth. I slammed the laptop shut. The room went silent. I looked at the clock.
2:16 a.m.
I finally understood. The recordings weren't simply showing me what was going to happen. They were responding to what I did. The tape appeared after I placed the tape. The tool moved after I moved it. The camera kept recording after I disconnected it. Tarek appeared because I called him. The south door appeared because I went there. Every warning became another step. Every attempt to stop the future created another piece of it. I looked at the orange tape through the glass. It was still on the floor, but I couldn't remember writing the second number. I looked at the multi-tool, still in its original position, but I knew where it would be next. I looked toward camera B. The indicator was still off, yet I could feel it watching me. The thought came slowly, cold and complete. The footage wasn't predicting what I would do. It was showing me where I had already been placed. The server wasn't recording tomorrow. It was arranging tomorrow. The wall clock read 2 hours, 16 minutes, and 43 seconds. The racks began humming louder. Not louder exactly. Closer. The sound seemed to come from inside my skull. I tried to stand. My legs felt heavy. The monitors flickered. Camera B came back online. I hadn't reconnected it. The live feed showed the cold aisle. Empty. Then I saw myself enter the frame. Not the future recording. The live feed. I was standing there, but I was still sitting at the desk. The version on the screen slowly turned toward the camera. He raised one hand and pointed behind me. I didn't turn. My future self kept pointing. The clock changed. 2 hours and 17 minutes. Every server fan stopped at once. Silence. Then something breathed behind me. Slowly. Deeply. The breath sounded exactly like mine. I whispered, "Don't turn around." A second voice whispered the same words into my ear. My voice, but older. Something touched the back of my neck. I watched the monitor. My future self was no longer pointing. He was running. The exact movement I'd seen in the first recording. The same black hoodie. The same slouched shoulders. The same terrified turn toward something outside the frame. Then he disappeared. I understood. That was why I'd been running. Not from something in the server room. From the camera. Because the camera wasn't showing me the future. It was showing me the moment after the future had already happened. My hands began shaking. On the black monitor beside me, my reflection appeared. I was standing there, but my reflection was sitting at my desk. I stared. It slowly lifted its head. Then it smiled. I didn't. Behind my reflection, something leaned into view. I couldn't see its face. Only the outline of a shoulder. Then a pale hand covered my reflection's mouth. My real hand moved. Slowly. Against my will. My fingers touched my lips. I tried to pull away. Couldn't. The clock changed. 2 hours, 17 minutes and 9 seconds. The exact timestamp from the first recording. The monitor flickered. For one final second, camera B showed the cold aisle. And there I was, running. Exactly as I'd seen 25 minutes earlier. But this time, I noticed something I hadn't noticed before. The camera wasn't behind me. It was in front of me. I wasn't running away from the thing. I was running toward the camera. Toward the only place the recording could see. Toward the moment that had already been recorded. The file ended. The screen went black. Then a new export appeared. 02:18, Cambi at MP4. Created at 2 hours 17 minutes and 9 seconds. I didn't open it. I already knew what it would show. Because somewhere inside server room B, the camera was still recording. And this time, I was already behind it.